Hey guys, welcome to In the Room with Communitas. My name is James, and this is Leon with me.
Yeah.
We don't
Hey.
have a guest today because Leon is our guest.
A
um,
little different. A little different.
Our hope is that these conversations start to offer a picture of what we're about in Communitas North America. We also really hope that both for us and for anybody who's like tuning in, that these conversations will kind of inspire creativity around the church and missions, and that might be an encouragement. And in light of that, we really do want them to be a dialogue. So if you have questions regarding any of the things, whether while we're live or later, please offer them. We want to. The more we can engage in dialogue, the better this thing is. So
Yeah, and I think sometimes these programs are kind of fun because when you and I get to dialogue around a topic, it's kind of like just gets to be this free flow. But
yeah,
it is nice if we could get a few more comments or questions in the down in the comments area. So, but yeah, definitely.
Today actually I'll start with this. A lot of us at Communitas North America got to be together. The beginning of October.
Yeah,
which
was
was
the beginning of October.
Awesome. And as a piece of that, we took some time to have a conversation around our values, and that was just a conversation that was exciting. It really reminded me a lot of why I love Communitas. And so we wanted to take some time today to have a conversation with you guys about that. And Leon is going to be our guest and just kind of explore that with us.
Yeah.
To kick us off, Leon, could you just do a broad aerial view of our Communitas North America values?
We're going to fly. We're going to do the flyover. Hey, by the way, welcome from snowy Minnesota. James is down in warm Arizona, and we had our first real snowfall of the year starting. Not a big storm, but hey, it's the start. We keep saying it's snow pretty outside now. But all right, core values, flyover of our core values. We have basically 3 core values, and we kind of call this our DNA. We are kingdom seeking, so we're building communities that reflect the values and character of Christ and his kingdom in the world. And we'll kind of dig into that a little bit more. We're grace oriented. We're living lives that reflect the transformative power of God's grace and restorative forgiveness without pretense. And I think that's a critical one. And we'll probably get into that one a little bit more. And then we're people focused. We develop relationships that bring emotional and relational and spiritual health to individuals, families, and communities. And, sometimes I think these can feel aspirational. We're working towards those, and we're grace oriented as I dropped a piece of paper. But there are ways that we've seen these practically lived out in our communities and in our relationships with each other, among team members. And one really cool thing about them is, we often refer to the Celtic knot. When we talk about the dynamics, we talk about the Celtic knot, and different areas and really our values kind of flow on that as well, because it's not they're not like set category. They intertwine in a lot of ways, and they're connected, and then they build on each other. Because to be truly kingdom seeking, you have to be grace oriented. And the kingdom of God, Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within us. And so it was within the people. He was saying this in the midst of a culture that had a very developed religious structure. And he's saying, it's not in these buildings, it's in you. It's you people. And I think, so it's like these things really kind of play off of each other in a lot of ways, which I think really gives them some power.
Yeah. We do love the Celtic knot.
We do. We love that. Yeah.
But I definitely think as I consider our core values, I just see how interrelated they all are. And
yeah, they are, which I think helps out a lot. Yeah.
I guess one of the first things I'd like to start us with is why do we feel like this is an important conversation? Why is it important that we share these values with people? Why is it important that we like meditate and hold on to these values internally?
I think for me, a big part of it is, we talk strategy, we talk the dynamics, and those things are important. We talk about being missional, micro churches. We talk about all these different strategic things. But there are a lot of organizations that talk about these type of strategies. A lot of organizations talk about being missional. Some do it well. Some, it was a buzzword for them. But when we get down to our identity flows out of our values. And that's what can make us a little unique. That's what makes Communitas a little unique. I don't say we're the only ones who have these values. I think other people, other organizations, other people live by these values. Yeah. But I think it helps us, we can embed, we can practice, we can initiate, we can practice, we can mature, we can build these faith communities, and we can start and shape these faith communities. But the values are what identify those communities so that we can, it's like, what are we inviting people into as an organization? What type of relationships are we inviting people into? Because, right now we do see a lot of what people call deconstruction happening. And we've talked about this in different settings. And when we think about our values, are these values sticky values for people? And I think they're actually values that we can invite emerging generations to reimagine church around. I mean, I don't have a large data pool for generational studies, but I do have a few Gen Zers living in my house, and I kind of just asked them, hey, what do you think of these? And they had a few questions for me, but they were like, yeah, there's some stuff in here that's worthwhile and stuff like that. And I go, oh, that's good to know. Yeah. Is this sticky for future generations and stuff? And I'm sure we'll tweak out how they actually get lived out in the future too. But
just to try to reiterate a little bit of that, I think I hear you saying that these values are important because we want our expression to come from these values.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I think I hear in that is the expression of who we are will be healthy when it's rooted. The expression of who we are at Communitas is rooted in we want to build Jesus' kingdom. We want to be generous with grace.
Yeah.
We want to value the individual. We want to value people.
Yeah.
Our expressions are going to be healthy and beautiful when that's
right. Yeah.
At the core of it.
Yeah, I believe so. And I think we need that. As I've stepped into this role as the North American director, I start to take a bigger view of the church in America and the church in North America, US and Canada. And I think we all see the challenges people are feeling right now. We see where some people are feeling like they don't know where their place is anymore. And I don't know that they've abandoned Jesus. I think they've just they're having a hard time with what is they currently see happening in the church at large. And I think if we come back to these type of values, we can speak to that, the time that we're in, the context we're in a way that creates something that's redemptive and holistic and healthy and encourages health. Yeah. And puts health and the growth of people above the growth of institutions. So
we just created that video on the Church Beautiful. We should throw a link to that in here.
Yeah, yeah, it's on there. I'll have to see if I can get it.
Got it. Well, maybe not. Maybe
I'll put it on after the show, maybe today. But yeah, I didn't think of that one. That was fun.
That's coming to mind, and I can't. That's such a rich idea that I'm not gonna be able to express it fully. But something that stood out to that, and as I engaged with that video, stood out to me a lot was this idea that we should be creating something really beautiful and healthy that just like creates flourishing around it. And when that happens, man, we're going to bring healing to the world around, and people are going to want a piece of what's happening. And I just think these ideas are so key to our values, are so key to that. And man, when I see, I was just having a conversation about grace, and when I see beautiful expressions of grace, it just speaks so loudly to me. Marcus Mumford has an album right now, and grace is a big theme in it. And he talks about,
I've seen that, and I've been curious about that one. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet.
I love it. But he is part of the conversation he's having in that album is just trying to forgive a wounding that seems impossible to forgive, and that idea really progresses. And one of the tracks, he is imagining himself in a place of judgment, like exposed. And he just has this line about being offered grace when we're the ones who've committed a wrong. And I love that album and love that picture of grace. And I just think,
it was on the student radio station up here has a program they play that they actually had an interview with him talking about that song, and I was like, wow, this is deep.
Yeah, it is powerful. The whole album is really powerful. That track is called Stonecatcher. It's spoken to me a lot. But all that to say, I just think when we see grace, whether you are attaching that to faith or not, it is so beautiful and so valuable. And I just think when we're expressing these values well, it's going to create beauty in the world.
I agree. So, it's, true.
So let's maybe get into a little bit more involved discussion about these ideas, and I think it'd be really valuable to talk about just what these ideas look like when the rubber meets the road, because it's easy. It's so easy for me to say that, like, I want to be a grace-oriented person, but tomorrow when I think somebody slighted me, I'm gonna struggle. So I just want to get into that. And we'll go ahead and start with grace oriented, because
let's do that.
Could we maybe unpack that idea a little bit more, and then maybe talk about expression of that?
Right. I think grace oriented, one thing I tend to substitute love in there when I talk about being grace oriented, because I think it captures what Jesus and his early followers said about the primacy of love. In 1 Corinthians 13, people have always put that passage on, the love passage on walls, and, it's for weddings and things like that. But it's really talking about the community of believers. And it starts out with Paul saying, you know what, I can do all these cool things, but if I'm not loving, well, it really means nothing. I can have total knowledge, I can understand all wisdom, but without love, it's like a sounding brass, I think he says, or something, or gong. It's like a gong on the Gong Show or something like that. Okay, I'm dating myself there. I watched The Gong Show as a kid. But anyway, and then Jesus, when he talks about how the disciples, he's saying to them, when you love one another, people will know that you are my disciples. And I always like how old writer Francis Schaeffer referred to love as the final apologetic. People love to use Francis Schaeffer stuff for a lot of, rational arguments for God and stuff like that. When he got down to the end of his life, he said, that means nothing. It's this love. He wrote The Marks of a Christian, and he said, love is the final apologetic. And I think that's, that goes hand in hand with grace, that we just have this sense of we love each other well, and we show grace to one another, and we recognize that none of us got to have it all figured out. None of us are perfect. And so we can show grace to one another, and we can show grace to people around us. We live in a very tense culture. And if we can show grace towards people, that, means a lot, just a practical level. We were just last week, we were like going out, my wife and I went out for like a date on Saturday, and we were checking out, we really wanted to try this one restaurant, this one ethnic restaurant. And we're like, because we really are trying to get to know people in that community in particular. And we get to the door, and it's like, oh, it's on health code temporarily closed, but they're still there. There's a couple people there. And so they're like chatting with us. And, I could have been like, oh, frustrated. Like, oh man, now I got to go find a new place for a restaurant and stuff like, but no, I just enjoyed the fact that I got to chat with a couple of people that were there working on the place, trying to get it ready to reopen. And you know what? That's a way that we show grace. And I think as we show grace towards people, we know that then they know that they're loved, and they know that they're loved well. So we seek to show that type of love. When things don't go perfectly, we make room for failure.
Yeah.
We make room, even in our leadership. It's like, we want to see, we have goals, we have agendas, but not everything gets done as quickly sometimes as we want it to. And instead of getting frustrated, we kind of learn how, hey, let's give each other grace in this stuff. And this is critical. I'm going to show this. Hopefully people will see this. This is from Ascent of a Leader. And it's Ascent of a Leader is a leadership book that some of us have read that are on the North American advancement team, in the leadership team in North America. And this is what they call, this is a combined ladder. They compare what they call the capacity ladder, which is what people kind of in industry and in culture, general culture, like growing your skills so that you can achieve a higher position. But then you plateau at some point. And then in the book, they talk about there's another ladder, the character ladder, and it's how we grow our character to really kind of realize our full potential, and even doing some things maybe beyond what we originally thought we were capable of. But the important thing in the character ladder is, in the end, they put them together. But in both the character ladder and the combined ladder, on the sides, they have the two rungs, or the two support poles for the ladder, are an environment of grace and relationships of grace. And I think those are critical, because I think when we create an environment of grace, people can risk failure and not worry about they're going to get their head cut off for it, and things like that. I think, we live in, again, it can be a kind of a dog-eat-dog world. And, in politics, when things don't go the way people want, they're like, oh, who do we blame for this? It didn't go as well as we thought it would. And in the end, though, if we create an environment of grace, I think we are able to give people the freedom to try stuff. And if it fails, it fails. But they gave it a good shot. And really, I think even it's rethinking our view of success. That people are like, speak of success in terms of achievements, but I love, a friend of mine once shared his definition of success had become obeying what God tells you to do. And if we're faithfully obeying what God tells us to do, we have the grace to understand that it may not all work the way we don't set expectations. We don't set, and when it comes to conflict, we look at how can we come to a redemptive solution and not just a judicial or a judgmental relationship in that.
Or I think with that same idea is I think there's such a risk of going like doing damage control in situations like that. Like how do you protect the organization? And I mean, this is one of the scary things, and this is one of the things where grace oriented is hard, but grace oriented says like it's into our other values, but like we're going to value these people and deal with the bear the burden of the mess rather than trying to get rid of it as quickly as possible so it doesn't hurt the organization. And it's so my brain is moving outside of the church world and into like more like work. But when people fail at work, when people like make major mistakes, the result is usually like we gotta get rid of this person.
Yeah.
They're causing a problem. It's gonna be more hassle to fix this than it is to invest in them. And the ideas of it's so hard to like, I don't know if you can be grace oriented and not be people focused, and I don't know if you can be people focused and not.
It is hard, and it is. I think there is something there, and I think there is something that's lost when you can't do both of those well, and it's not easy, and it's not this, feel good, everything's okay, I'm okay, you're okay type stuff that sometimes people like. You talk grace oriented and people are like, well, don't you have standards? And I'm like, well, when people are hurt, there are some areas where, I think we've seen scandals in churches around misconduct and child abuse and abuse of women and things like that. And I think we look at, okay, if somebody vulnerable is being hurt, we got to step in and we have to have some sense of, so we have policies around those type of things.
Yeah.
But we keep those very purposely. We don't create a large number of policies so that we make it so complicated and we create barriers for unnecessary barriers for people. We have a policy manual for our staff, but it's compared to some of the policy manuals I've seen out there, it's very thin and it's balanced. I tend to think. We could still probably get better at some things, but we've started to say, these are issues where if vulnerable people are being hurt, we have to have standards there. But
absolutely,
when it comes to a lot of other stuff that people get caught up on, we just have this attitude of grace towards one another. In fact, we, and I'll put this in link. I did get the link in there for the Vimeo channel for the Dynamic Adventure, which is where the Church Beautiful video is.
Yeah.
But the other thing I'll put in the chat or in the comments is our the belief statement on our on the Communitas International website, which we also abide by. And we've been purposeful on, let's keep it down to the basic creeds of the church. Yeah. Let's go back to, and we use a little bit more contemporary language, but it's based in those early creeds because we just, all the things that we've over the centuries have started, and generations have started to divide over and create these hot button issues. We're like, we're just not going to take a stand on these things. As long as you're not like in this realm of it's absolutely got to be this way or it's absolutely got to be this way, we can probably work with each other on stuff.
I think that's certainly one of the places you see the expression of grace oriented in Communitas. I just remember, I mean, I know we've got a spectrum of views, and I've experienced being with Communitas leadership and just the like respect that everybody holds for each other. And man, I just think grace says you have value, and your value is not dependent on the things you do,
right?
Whether they be failures or accomplishments. And I have just seen that at the leadership level, seen that expressed so well in Communitas. I think one of the things I've felt a lot of thirst for is just community where there's permission to be like, I'm not thriving. I have these shortcomings, and people are still like, you're valuable, and there's permission to like express that here. And I think this is one of those places where the people focused marries the grace oriented really well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So like when I'm not thriving because you guys value me, there's gonna be a like, let's help you towards a place where you're thriving.
Mm-hmm.
But that is real grace, because it's like you're valuable, and you're valuable enough that we want to see you well. We want to see what's best for you. And
yeah, I think that's
it's not flippant.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's the thing. I think people, actually, I heard somebody say this on a podcast a while back. When you talk about living this way, walking in grace with people, like as it's really meant to be, when Jesus talked about the narrow road in the Sermon on the Mount, that's probably what he was talking about, is this learning to live graciously with other people, because the popular thing to do is to create a system by which we eliminate people and by which we judge people, and we determine whether or not they're worthy of our relationship circles. That's the wide road that can lead to destruction. And it's funny because I think in some circles of Christianity, we've kind of said, the narrow road is all these rules you got to follow. It's like, no. When Jesus was talking about the narrow road, he's talking about it's hard to live in this realm of grace.
Yeah.
And I think that's right. I think that's key. Learning how to be gracious with people and have conversations. I've had conversations with friends that I know the Spirit's working with them, and they really are deeply committed to following Jesus, following Scripture. And then we hit some points where we go, you know what? We're not coming to the same conclusion here, but I trust the Holy Spirit's working with you. You believe the Holy Spirit's working with me.
Yeah.
And if we're all just open to the Holy Spirit, we can trust that he's going to help us sort it out, because probably neither of us have it all figured out, type of thing.
Yeah.
So
we need more of that. We need more of, this is just an idea that I'm reminded of regularly, and I think it's something that I struggle with, but I want to believe that like God's in relationship and in dialogue with the next person, the way that he's in relationship and in dialogue with me. And I just think when I choose to believe that, I have so much more, I'm more prone to assuming the best of others. I have so much more grace for them. And I'm like, if you're wrong about something, and Jesus, you got the Holy Spirit, Jesus is going to get you there.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think that's critical. Yeah. And, I think the other thing about, and this is very true, grace oriented, we laugh at ourselves. Well, that's funny in some ways. I think when we get together on, team meetings, whether it's on Zoom or in person, there's kind of this sense of we know each other's quirks, and we're kind of like, hey, Leon's being Leon, James is being James, Brent's being Brent, Mike's being Mike, Kelsey's being Kelsey, type of thing. We just kind of learn to like not take ourselves so seriously. You know,
Yeah, and
and
there's a comfort in our meetings that I think reflects the Grace culture.
it's sometimes a little, sometimes maybe a little too comfortable, but it is a good. I mean, it is good. I think it's appropriate. The hey, let's get things done. Part of me is like, oh, okay, no, let's just chill, type of stuff, and we don't have to get it all done, type of thing. So.
Well, I keep talking people focused. So do we want to jump into that and talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's move towards people focused. And I think it's critical. We want to see people walk in health, and we want to focus on their emotional health, their spiritual health, their relational health, and make it more about lifting up people than lifting up institutions and programs. I think we've all seen, many of us have encountered situations where you feel like the program is more valuable than the people in religious circles. And we really need to say, hey, are we making our decisions based on what's best for people and best for the people involved? Or are we making the decisions because of what we think is best for the organization or the institution? And we also really desire collaborative leadership, and I'll put that in a practical term. My official title director. I rarely use that in our meetings, and you guys have you kid me about it, because I tend to think of myself as a team leader, but it's really about everybody on the team. I mean, I was very, when we got together in Denver and we had the North American advancement team and the rest of like some other people, other practitioners in Communitas there, I was like, I want as many faces up here as I can get up here, because I don't want it to all be about me telling people what to do. I want us to all just draw on all the giftings. And quite honestly, I would say some of the best presentations weren't done by me. And that's good. I love it that way. It also means generous hospitality. We try to make our lives, we seek to be hospitable to others. And that's not just like within our circles of Communitas, but in life in general. We want to live lives that live that hospitality, that generous hospitality. I mean, we try to include people in our lives, in our ministry in Indianapolis, as much as possible. Just that you're part of the family. It's not just simply you're in my faith community. You're part of our family. And I think there's healthy boundaries, and sometimes family needs time to like just be by themselves. But we live with this hospitality that welcomes people. We've got in the next, we had, a few weeks ago, friends of ours were like, they're looking at houses up this way, and they're like, oh, hey, we want to come hang. And we're like, oh, okay, we'll make it work. And then my dad calls and goes, hey, I'm planning to stop by Thanksgiving. Oh yeah, we'll figure it out, type of thing.
Yeah.
I think but yet not just for people that we're friends with, for the stranger. I mean, biblical hospitality shows hospitality for the stranger.
Yeah.
And, learning to show that generosity of life to people is part of being people focused. And I think also just, letting people move in their giftings and their strengths, and whatever, helping them develop their character and their strengths.
Yeah.
We generally in onboarding, we do strength finders as one of the things that we encourage people to do, the strengths finder, and learn their strengths and grow in their strengths. And we want people to develop in that, whether or not it's even technically churchy type stuff.
Yeah.
I think of like, for example, we've had over our program, um, over the last season, we've had, I think like Shannon with the work that they've been doing with Afghan women there in Tulsa. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
that has come out of her developing skills in the area of being a doula. And it's just, and okay, that's not technically church stuff, but
Yeah.
it builds an environment for relationship to be hospitable to the Afghan women in her community in a time of need. And I think so. We're like, yeah, grow in that skill.
There's a lot of permission giving at Communitas that I think reflects this people focused value. And we see so many, like, such a diversity of expressions of faith and expressions of church in Communitas because somebody looked at Jeff Schaefer and said, this thing that Jesus is inviting you to is valuable. Like, go pursue that. And same with Shannon, and you just like list. And I think one of the products of that is we see a huge diversity of expressions of church, expressions of faith, which
Yeah,
is it's beautiful and it's important. We talk about contextualization, and contextualization happens when we value people.
right,
It happens naturally when we value
right. It
people.
does. And well, somebody we haven't even interviewed yet. I know is doing some stuff on art and spirituality with women in her community, and when we talk about what is happening, and she's gifted as an artist, she's very creative, and so I'm like, keep honing that skill and keep
Yeah,
including other people in it, because what she has happening when she brings these women together is beautiful, and it's healthy, and I'm like, that's church, and that is, developing those things is good.
yeah,
um and so we seek to be those type of people that we're encouraging everybody's gifts, and we want to build up people. And I remember when this was introduced to, because this is not original with me, this is not original, this is stuff that people in Communitas were working on way back in the beginning,
yeah,
not the beginning, but I mean, over the last 10 years, 15 years and stuff like that. And, I remember when our former president Dudley introduced these values, this was the one that drew me more, because I was like, I'd been in situations where I felt like the program was more important than the
mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like being people focused and caring for people well creates a healthy place where shalom is happening. And if we can continue to do that, it just creates an environment where people want to be a part of it. So
Absolutely. I want to circle back to one of the first things you were saying, just because I definitely think it bears restating. But you were talking about caring for people on like multiple levels, like caring
mm-hmm.
for like the emotional wellness of people, the physical wellness of people, spiritual wellness of people. And one of the reasons I see that expressed in Communitas in two ways that I really love. And I think you see it a little bit in the journey groups where
Mm-hmm.
like I love that Communitas values the emotional well-being of our people. And that's like happening in then the spiritual well-being too. And that's happening in journey groups. Like people are getting to share their burdens and just like celebrate what
Right.
Jesus is doing in their world, work through hard things, share, like carry each other's burdens. And I just see a lot of there's like a whole holistic piece of that
Mm-hmm.
that really important. If we just if we only are caring for the spiritual well-being of people, it's just hard for me to imagine thriving, like the people around us thriving, if that's all we're making them out to be.
Right. Yeah, I think it is. I think, making sure people are doing well, health, their emotional, their relational health, their families, how are their families doing, I think is critical.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that their families are perfect. I think all of us have times we're walking through struggles with our families. And when we talk in journey groups, we go, yeah, things aren't going so well, but it's okay. Let's wrap around each other a bit in that. But creating a place where people can be honest about that and be transparent about things aren't always going well. And so I think that's where grace oriented and people focused kind of overlap with each other a lot. And we're even looking at how do we expand those things? How do we incorporate more opportunities for people when they need coaching to get coaching? How do we create opportunities for spiritual direction for people if they want to see a spiritual director and they need some help with that? How do we help that happen? And some of that, we're working on how do we create resources so we can have that, do it even better. How do we help people find therapists when they need to see a therapist? Things like that. Because I think all of those things are important. And I think if we're taking care of the holistic health of people, we create a better community.
Yeah. Another thing is I just think the holistic care thing feeds into the missional nature of Communitas a lot. And I reference Jeff Schaefer so much because he discipled me. I'm very second generation Communitas North America. My dad discipled me so much. Jeff Schaefer discipled me so much. But I just remember working with Jeff and probably loving the world around us was such a huge part of Kaleo's values when I was a child. But when I was working with Communitas, Jeff really gave me words for Jesus cares about the physical well-being of these people living on the streets. And we need to value that. If we can't always treat being kind and sharing food as a means to an end, the wholeness of this person Jesus wants to see thriving. And so I just think that people-focused piece is so good for our health internally and so drives our mission. We just want to see thriving.
Right. And I think that's, and I agree. And I think it's not just on the relational level with the people we're reaching out to, but it needs to be on the leadership level. If it's not on the leadership level, you really don't have a healthy community to bring people into.
Yeah.
Anyway. And I think it has to, that's where I think we need to prioritize those things.
Yeah. Well, last one. It's getting about that time.
Yeah, it is.
What does it mean to be kingdom seeking? How do we see that expressed? I think we do this one really well.
We do. Well, yeah, we do. I think we do. I think we do that. Some would say we probably do it so well that people don't really know we exist sometimes. Which maybe, that's kind of if you're in the marketing realm, you're like, hey, you got to watch your brand. And I'm like, we don't worry about our brand. But, I think, I like how when we talk about how we live this out, it's we seek to see where is God at work and how can we partner with him in that. And that it doesn't all have to have our name. It's about building up the kingdom of Jesus and not personal empires and not just trying to get people to join my cause. I think people have become tired of getting people to join their cause. We get, hey, come join our, be in our movement, rah, 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 us. And it's like, there's a point where it's like people are just like, I'm over this, type of thing. And I think, we invite people. We want to be a welcoming place. Yeah, we promote Communitas North America because we think there's some good things here that we want people to be a part of. But at the same time, we're kind of like, we walk with people that don't necessarily identify themselves as Communitas, and we encourage them to develop what God's telling them to do. If they want to connect it with Communitas, we're good with that. If it ends up they kind of create their own thing, well, we still want to partner with that when we can. I mean, we live this out in Indianapolis a lot, with, building relationships with Food for Souls, this entity, this organization, this group of people from a church up on the north side that were starting to do outreach to people experiencing homelessness. And then we kind of started to walk with them. And so I kind of walked in both realms a bit, Diakonos and Food for Souls, but they kind of was overlapping ministry. But in the end, I mean, do they say that they're Communitas? No. Are they influenced by Communitas values? Yes. I mean, a lot of what they do now just really reflects what we're about and things like that. Same thing, with Circle City Village. I mean, in the end, is it a Communitas project at this point? Probably, it wouldn't be considered officially, but it's been influenced by our values, and we're going to continue to support it, even though I'm not physically living there in Indianapolis anymore. We stay involved with it. And I think that's part of just saying, hey, how do we seek out, just being about the kingdom of God and not about our own name and our own organizational promotion. In fact, I think even with Circle City Village, it's always kind of funny. It's like, we're building on land that's owned by another church, and they, they're all of the people in their circle are all like, hey, this is this great project that Lyndhurst Baptist Church is doing. And I'm like, yeah, cool. I'm like, yeah, I don't, because I value the people there, and it's not about my organization, their organization. It's about the kingdom of God. How are we as kingdom people working together to create shalom in our communities? And the more we can do that, the better the better our communities are. When they don't see the divisiveness, when they don't see the, hey, my program versus your program, but we're actually looking at how do we build up the kingdom of Jesus and the values of Jesus and the character of Jesus.
Yeah.
Which I think is critical.
I think this is very naturally expressed by a lot of our people. I just when I was very new to Communitas, I wasn't officially anything. I just was going through the beta onboarding cohort. I just saw in a lot of Communitas leaders this excitement about where kingdom work was happening in the world around them, without any thought to whether or not it was Communitas or was gonna be Communitas, and it just seems second nature for most of the Communitas people to be excited about where the kingdom is budding in the world around them.
Yeah.
Not really think at all about if our name's on it or not.
Exactly. And I think that's, that's really what we want to see happen more and more. And I think because, again, our culture is tired of subdividing, of institution building. I mean, they're looking for where are just genuinely, authentically good things happening.
Yeah.
And I won't worry about whose name is on it type of thing. And I think when we live by those type of values, we can promote something that's good. So, another practical way up here in Minnesota, we're planning, one, we're just getting our general Communitas people together in a couple of weeks just to kind of start the process here. And we've been making relational connections to lead up to it. But we want to see sometime next spring that we bring together Start to bring together other, like I said, there are other people that talk micro church and they talk missional. And stuff like that. How do we bring together these practitioners to like, just say, hey, let's just spend some time relating to each other, hearing about each other's work, praying for each other, and not worrying about, okay, who's the head organization. We've done these things, we've done these events in different locations that we call Fresh. And, we sponsor them. And so, we say, it's sponsored by Communitas. And usually the next day there'll be something where people can learn a little bit more about Communitas. But initially it's about, we just invite people in the community that are living by the same DNA and are doing good things in the community. And how do we celebrate goodness in a community? How do we celebrate people that are sowing shalom from whatever organization?
There's just a strong, and I think this is because people in Communitas are excited about what Jesus is doing and believe that Jesus is really active. But I just think there's a desire to celebrate, again, where the kingdom is like beginning to bud. And then like, how do we support this? How do we encourage these people? And what can we offer to help this keep thriving?
Right. Exactly. And then the other thing we do, we look at our daily lives and how can we live intentionally, making a point of spending time with people that we feel like God wants us to spend time with. And how do we be intentional about being in places where people are, that, people talk about the third space a lot. And it's like this whole idea of finding these places where people are and being in their world and entering into their world. And so, we talk about, we're starting to kind of, as we're here, really feel through what are the restaurants we really want to be at regularly, because we want to get to know the people there. In Indianapolis, we would always go shopping at Aldi. My wife, the last time she went there, like we're just getting ready to move, she got the same, I want to say Kathy's her name. I may be wrong, but yeah, it's Kathy. And it's like, Kathy has been like the clerk that has been there the longest, the whole time we were living in the same, going to that same Aldi, and like and so Tina was like, I'm going in her line, and I just want to tell her, hey, thanks. We're moving, but I've enjoyed being, getting to know, or just having you work here and seeing your face all the time and stuff like that. And I think it's that thing about being intentional about spending time, putting yourself in places where you can be with people. And how do I see my relationships being part of making the kingdom, the good news of Jesus, the goodness of Jesus known. And not having this like dichotomized world where it's like, okay, I got my church face I do here, and I got my business face I do here, my shopping face. But how am I living out the kingdom in all areas of life?
The kingdom seeking approach, it's very resistant to like notions of like care for this thing that happens in this space. It's just one of, all three of these values do this, but this value like calls us to seek the health and the well-being and the flourishing of the people outside of our in-group.
Yeah, I think so. And I think really then we're modeling, people talk to us about, like when they think more programmatically, they always think of discipleship, like, how do we make disciples? And we talk about how, discipleship is a very key part of, we want to be, that we feel like we're making disciples. And people think, well, that means you have to have classes to disciple. And we're like, no. Jesus, when he was making disciples, he was doing it out in the community. He was taking
Yeah.
his disciples out in the community, and he was saying, the kingdom of heaven is with you. It didn't happen, and he didn't run them through a program.
Yeah.
He said, let's go be with people. And then you're going to start doing the things that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And I think that's what, and when you do that, you're spending time with people in your community. You're getting to know the people in your community. So
we had our conversation with John about 2 weeks back. So I just felt like so many good themes of discipleship came up, and I was imagining a lot of that, the like discipleship that happens on the move.
Yeah.
Jesus was teaching people to be generous and cross these lines by doing it side by side with them. And what I think, when we consider what we know about human learning and just our brains, like that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
We struggle so much with crossing. They're just boundaries that we feel uncomfortable with, whether they be socioeconomic or they be political. And I think because our brain is so wired to like be like, oh, I don't engage there, there's a threat there. Like, if we want to disciple people well, we need to go cross those lines with them and show them how that's done well. And that's so what Jesus did.
Right.
The disciples were uncomfortable when they went to go have dinner at the Roman sympathizer's house.
Yes.
That was a big political line. They're like,
yes.
You represent the empire that is oppressing us. You are
Well,
capital B bad guy.
How many times do we see that? I mean, you look at the life of Jesus and you just see so many times he would take his disciples into uncomfortable situations, or he'd show grace to somebody. It's just like, hey, why do the Syrophoenician woman, and he played with her a little bit. I mean, he was kind of like, yeah, well, I'm supposed to be helping the children of Israel. I can't take the food from the children and give it to the dog. I mean, but I think he was playing it in the sense of he's trying to get them to kind of think of what they're probably thinking.
Yeah.
And then he's also like, but he knew that this woman had enough faith that she was going to push it. And that probably taught them a lesson to say, hey, these people are
mirror, I think, in a really powerful way to the disciples in that moment. He's like verbalizing their like, I mean, bigotry, maybe, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And then he subverts it by like praising her so highly. He just like, that was not a gentle moment towards the disciples. I don't feel like
it's like, dude, you guys got to get over this. So drop your nationalism.
I think this is something my parents did well. My parents took me into environments that felt foreign, and like, because my parents like discipled me that way, those things I think felt a lot less threatening for me than people whose parents like didn't have them do that.
Yeah, I agree.
I have a memory from being young, and Kaleo was sharing a meal at a park that we just often hung out with people who were living at that park, probably once a month for a good season. And I remember having a conversation with some guy who was living there and walking away. And my dad was like, you had a long conversation with that guy. And in hindsight, I'm like, Dad, I had a long conversation with that guy because the way you and Mom lived, that guy was just another guy that we hung out with.
Yeah.
But discipling does that.
Yeah. And it's, I see it. I watch, our own children, and like our two oldest are doing reading tutoring through AmeriCorps this year. And I go, it's funny because this week is the first week that, one's living here and one's living down in my brother's house because the school is near his house. And just watching Elena just come home and like, I got to talk to kids today. It's like she's finally getting to that point. She's done all the training and now she's like, I get to be with kids. And I'm like, yeah. I'm just seeing them emerge in ways that they're like, yeah, they love to be around and help others. To me goes, wow, they're learning the values. Yeah. They're learning kingdom values well. So
we need to do a big conversation on discipleship. It's such a good topic. And
we do. And we will do more next year. I'll be interesting to see what we're going to take a break here. We probably should wrap this one up.
We should wrap this one up. I'm not surprised this went long though.
Yeah.
I was excited to.
But yeah, we will take a break. It's the holidays coming up. So we got Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that. So if you've been checking these things out every other week or whatever, or maybe not when we broadcast them, but afterwards, just know that we're going to take a little bit of a break, probably February or March of next year. We'll start up season 2. I'm like, man, we just finished a 14 episode season. And it's like, we're just kind of like, hey, let's try to do this. And now we're like, okay, we've finished season 1. Let's think about season 2. And we're looking at some ways to expand it, things like that. But yeah, so we are going to take a break. It's been great doing these.
Yeah.
Thanks, James, for kind of pushing me on this one a little bit. We will start up again in February, March. We're kind of still feeling out what the topics will be. I think definitely discipleship will be a good one to get into. And there's some other ones that we've talked about off on the side. But we will see everybody. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving, Christmas. What?
Let's plug our values into the show notes.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do the values too. But again, hey, actually, I think they're in the same link with the beliefs and the values statement. I'm not positive, but I'll double check, make sure we've got those. Anyway, but yeah, we will see everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving. Have a great Christmas, New Year's. And
thanks, guys.
Thanks.